And for me, a key moment I'll never forget. I was always of a mind that we needed to be so successful that we wouldn't need to exist. So when there was a time when I noticed we were making a problem worse, I went to my feminist mentor and said, we are making this problem worse. What is the deal? And she said to me, we needed on occasion to rub salt into the wound so that we would always be here when we would be needed. In other words, it would be bad to be completely successful because if we were needed again, we wouldn't be here. So we needed, in other words, to maintain the pain.
Yeah.
I realized that, well, this is a business for power and money.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It wasn't about solving any issues.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Tammy Bruce knows of what she speaks. She's been through domestic violence. She's been through a whole hell of a lot of stuff, which some of it is in the book here. Fear Itself, which is her latest. She is so smart and has an unbelievable background of experience with the left and with the right. She made a move away from the left to come to the right. We're going to get into that with her, plus solutions, actual steps that you can take. This is a hopeful book, even though it's called Fear Itself. Tammy Bruce focuses on how you can take control of how you feel about everything that's out there and why some of what you're being told is purely there to make you scared. And there's a reason for that, and it's not a good reason. We'll get into all of that, and hopefully you'll end up feeling more hopeful at the other end. Tammy Bruce is next. I can't think of anyone better to talk to right now about the political situation we are in than Tammy Bruce. She has just written a book that's coming out, Fear Itself. She has an article in Real Clear Politics today. And Tammy, let's just cut to the chase. Biden was forced out. This is not Biden stepping down. Would you agree with my assessment there?
Well, yes. And there's even some conversation on social media. I saw Bill Ackman, who's a major philanthropist and hedge fund guy, noting that the signature was an automated signature, that it wasn't handmade. So there's many questions. There's some jokes out there about, has anybody told Biden that he stepped down?
Yeah.
That we need a proof of life from the president. But things move so quickly, Michele, that we tend to, it's understandable. It's like holding on to a roller coaster.
Yeah.
You tend to not notice the details. That is part of the point. And so things are moving quickly, but on the president's schedule, it's blank. And the one reason he gave in the letter was that he wanted to be able to just be president and focus on that one job. And yet, and I know that he's recovering from COVID, but you still, as we saw during COVID, that you can still do your job. You can still be president. You can still have conversations. You can still, as we've learned as broadcasters, you can still do television. You can do radio, and you can sound like a frog a little bit like I do. All of us have been talking, even though I'm talking and I can't shut up. We've really been talking for the last, it's been a week and 2 days, 9 days since the assassination attempt. So we're all in a very unique position. And I think that you consider the series of events, the horrible debate, the assassination attempt happening 15 days later, the RNC happening on schedule with an injured Trump, the honoring of Corey, our firefighter who was killed that day. Then you have the Biden campaign insisting he's not dropping out. And then he gets COVID and he goes back to Delaware. And then we get a letter on personal stationery that is auto-signed, not giving any reason for this.
Right.
So I think that clearly there was pressure from most sides, and it certainly contradicts their constant argument about saving democracy, because I don't know how this does that.
It's very undemocratic. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah.
And that has been pointed out by multitudes of people, how bad this looks.
Mm-hmm.
And now it appears at the moment that Kamala Harris, the vice president, is getting the support of most of the Democratic establishment, minus some very big exceptions like former President Barack Obama, like Hakeem Jeffries, at least as you and I are speaking. Things can change on a dime, as we've seen over the last 10 days.
Right.
But this is interesting. What do you make of the fact that she's on the phone, she's trying to get support, but that some of these major players, Nancy Pelosi, aren't there yet?
It's understandable, a political tactic. She wants to make herself, indisputable. She's trying to rush ahead to capture all the flags in order to be the one. But this is, of course, it's questionable. I mean, you've got she's taken apparently control of the $91 million in the Biden-Harris campaign fund. She is still the vice president only. Biden has not relinquished or resigned from the presidency. She has not, in her life for the presidency, when she ran against Biden during the primary, she dropped out very early, never received a vote, never won even a state. And yet she's moving herself in as though Biden is not even the president. So as vice president, she would naturally take over the presidency. But now it's like, well, Biden endorsed her. I understand that people can endorse and not endorse, but the result of the primaries were the attachment of delegates to that individual. And there's still no nominee. They still have to do it through the convention. And there are some rules in some states where they are required to vote for the person on the first ballot, the delegates at a convention, for the person that won. And that's Joe Biden. So the Democrats have some legal issues. They have some rules issues they have to deal with. We know there were other Democrats interested in being president, and they were shut out of the process. Joe Manchin has made some noise about maybe coming back as a Democrat and, running. What it does show us is that we would have, I think it's the first time in 56 years, someone who did not win a vote in a primary or win a primary in any state would be the nominee of a major party. And considering the rhetoric over the last 8 to 10 years about saving democracy, I'm not sure how the Democrats imagine this, but mostly if you're going to effectively move a soft coup in this environment, wouldn't you want to choose someone who it can be separate from the issues that matter to the American people? Trump is getting support because of the issues, not because they didn't like Joe Biden. It's because of the economy and because of crime and because of the open border and because of the international situation. So why would you choose someone who comes with exactly the same baggage, has the exactly poor popularity ratings, and expect that person to beat Trump when it's about the issues?
Do you think she's the sacrificial lamb? That they kind of know, on the one hand, we may not be able to beat Trump, so throw her out there. Let's, she'll lose and she'll never be a candidate again because of that. I don't know. Anything's possible.
She wouldn't, if that was the scenario, she wouldn't do it. You wouldn't want, just like her dropping out early when she ran for president. Why would you want another failure? Right. We saw what it did to Hillary losing to Donald Trump. But what they are, and to your point, they are extremely worried, understandably, about the down ballot. This could be an effort. And if she's, I don't know, maybe she really believes, look, the left is deluded most of the time. She clearly is deluded, that she could win. But it also means that they need someone at the top. If they're worried about young people and the people that are anti-Israel and perhaps pro-Hamas, if it's the squad that's worried, that they think that this candidacy will draw those people in. My goodness, it's exactly this dynamic regarding Israel and the violence and the defunding the police and all the other stuff that Kamala Harris is much more left on that than Joe Biden ever was. He went along with it, but my goodness, why would they think that that person who is like doubly bad on the issues that Americans care about would win? But if it pulls, the problem for them is Democrats not voting for Trump. Some are, but Democrats staying home.
Yeah.
Because there's no one to vote for. If they think if they can get people to the polls, that then maybe they can save some House seats or maybe not lose the Senate. I think that's pie in the sky, but as we've seen, anything is possible.
I mean, now more than ever, we cherish free speech and we got to hang on to it. It's at the very heart of our democracy. It's a principle we hold sacred. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we value. But in this digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being muffled or overshadowed or even silenced in mainstream narratives. And that leaves a lot of people feeling voiceless in conversations about our financial independence and security. And this is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research isn't a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the growing uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This free report highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it completely free by texting IDEAS to 76626. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act right now. Text IDEAS, IDEAS, to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Text IDEAS to 76626 to claim your free copy. So Tammy, congratulations. Another book that's going to be another bestseller. Fear Itself, Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda. What I find most fascinating about you, there's so much interesting stuff in your background, and a lot of it's in this book and your others. But you used to be part of the left. You were the president of the National Organization of Women. I wonder if there was a seminal moment, or was it a gradual thing that brought you to the right?
You know, it was a series of what some call clicks. There is a moment-to-moment dynamic that happens. And, you know, when you're on the left, you're in there for a reason. And usually there's been some damage. And you're looking to help. And there's also a very kind of empathetic kind of reason for it, but it's usually personal. And so that kind of mission, kind of attitude obscures other things that are going on. And for me, a key moment I'll never forget was when we were doing something antithesis that would really solve our issues. I was always of a mind that we needed to be so successful that we wouldn't need to exist. So when there was a time when I noticed we were making a problem worse, I went to my feminist mentor and said, you know, we are making this problem worse. What is the deal? And she said to me, and this was, I think, they trusted me enough to just be, you know, blunt about it and to start training me into this other mode, was that we needed on occasion to rub salt into the wound so that we would always be here when we would be needed. In other words, it would be bad to be completely successful, because if we were needed again, we wouldn't be here. So we needed, in other words, to maintain the pain.
Yeah.
And I realized that, well, this is a business for power and money.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It wasn't about solving any issues. And, you know, there was certain things in the very beginning that, you know, easy things that we needed to change that were glaring. Things like women weren't allowed on the shuttle flights between New York and DC. Girls were not allowed to have paper routes. Girls and young women were not allowed to be pages in Congress. You may remember this, but I remember my mother during the Carter years in the 70s looking at the help wanted ads, where the ads for women were in one category and ads for men were in another one. And so if all the assistant manager jobs were for the men and the cashier jobs were listed for the women, and you could not apply for the jobs that were in the men category. So, I mean, these things sound insane, but This was not so long ago.
No, No,
So we needed it, but it turned into a monster, as it does when the left hijacks anything, for money and for destruction and for power. And that's what happened to the feminist movement. So that was one of many issues. I was also in psychotherapy for an extended period of time, helping me stay out of the pit because of my own personal life and getting over childhood stuff and everything. And that helped me. And so being on talk radio helped me. Talking to Christians every day, for the most part, as the token liberal on a Los Angeles station. So it was a combination of things, but I'm grateful it happened.
It's remarkable. Her story is amazing, and I encourage people to just buy all of her books so you can understand what she's gone through and where she comes from. So now you make this move to the right. How many friends did you lose?
Many, of course. Some stayed, and because there was an understanding, especially among my generation, that something was not right. And yet, when your family is a certain group or a political group, or that is your lifestyle, it is hard to leave because then you lose everything. Yeah. And most people don't want to lose everything. I, for whatever reason, didn't particularly care. I was driven by really wanting to make a difference. And now the good news is that I can make sure that my experience was not in vain. Mm-hmm. And it's what I apply to my assessment of what's going on now, what the left is doing, what their intentions are, not just from my experience and having been on the left, but in the decades that have followed, is recognizing the trajectory and understanding the mentality that's happening and what their goals are. And that's partly what I hope this book will contribute to.
When we come back from this quick break, the notion of fear is where Tammy starts this book, and it's so important. And I think both sides accuse each other of using it, but I want you to hear Tammy's argument about this. That's next. But first, economists are warning that massive tax hikes could devastate your IRA and 401k account as the stock market braces for impact. And with inflation still on the rise and global uncertainty looming, it's clear why central banks and savvy Americans are turning to gold. If you hadn't had your eye on gold, time to make it a priority. I'm urging you to call my friends at Priority Gold to find out how they can help you diversify your savings with physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-405-GOLD or visit prioritygold.com/golden for a free gold info guide. Plus, see if you qualify for free shipping and storage. Experts agree that physical gold is one of the best ways to fortify your savings, no matter the economic climate. Act now to get your portfolio working for you while the market is golden. Call 1-800-405-GOLD to speak with a gold specialist or visit prioritygold.com/golden to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD or prioritygold.com/golden. So Tammy, you start in the book with just this idea of fear and how it is utilized. What is it that you want people to understand about how the left employs fear to keep people on their side?
This is pretty much kind of the thing. If the people took one thing away from the book, it's the realization, the real incorporating into your understanding of reality, that what we're experiencing now in the world with fear and anxiety and nonstop problems is not natural. It's not organic, and it's not inevitable. Fear has been a concept, a strategy used for millennia, and it is meant to help quell populations. Now, fear, it's not a book like condemning fear in general. Fear is a gift. It is meant to be transitory, to give us a signal regarding, our logical and reasonable minds so that we can make choices about what to do. And then you move on from the fear and you act, right? But I'm talking about chronic fear. Mm-hmm. And we saw it with COVID. That's pretty much the most immediate example.
Yep.
So it is the development of a process that literally makes you afraid to speak your mind, to go outside, to gather with your friends, to have any hope in the future, because chronic fear turns into mass anxiety. people choosing to not have children or families because they're worried about global warming. So this is an old dynamic. It's not just COVID. COVID was like the epitome of them being open about the nature of what they're doing, especially, and I thank God I got it in the book, Fauci coming forward, admitting that the 6 feet apart distance just sort of appeared, and the admission that the masks really in the general population work maybe at 10% on the margins. All these things that we were told were science were not. So my goal here, and I think the moment people realize that this is not a new normal, you don't have to adapt, that also being in fear constantly and in anxiety becomes something that we do adapt to. It does become our normal. It's so familiar, we become inured to it. And in order to defeat it, and it is defeatable, the first thing is, it's like pulling back the curtain. Speaking of curtains back there, is that you've the spell, once the spell is broken, and the spell is the convincing of you of a few things. And again, the fear is maintained in a variety of different ways. We had the big events. We have the constant hectoring about global warming. Inserted into that is that we're the problem. Even breathing is the problem. Our existence is the problem. What we do as humans, America is the problem. But in addition to cultivated major events like that, then you have the open border and crime. Mm-hmm. Suddenly there is no order. You don't feel safe jogging in a park. If you're mom of 5, you might get killed. We have hundreds of terrorists that we've been told have been, unvetted, allowed into the country. Others, millions of people now that we don't know who they are. The rise in crime feeds into this. The economy, Michele, feeds into this. That if you don't know if you can afford gas to get to work tomorrow, what do you think that does to you? If you don't know what your kid is going to be dealing with in school, that does a great deal. Also, going to a school board meeting, suddenly getting a visit from the FBI. And while not everyone gets the visit from the FBI, we hear about it. While not everyone went to a school board meeting, we become afraid of and wondering. It's like, well, is it safe to go? Maybe I am wrong. Maybe my child is not my own. Maybe agents of the state are better. And it becomes dangerous. Language begins to change. And then suddenly you get fired for misgendering someone. Yes. Or for not using the right pronoun, or for not getting the jab. It's multiple layers. Defunding the police. You want perpetual chronic fear. When you've got people in San Antonio calling 911 and having to wait 10, 15 minutes for the phone to be answered. This is, again, you think, oh, well, we're in late stage Soviet Union, which in part this does mirror, but this is deliberate. Clearly, it's a matter of policy. And the reason, Michele, as I wrap this up, is because the more afraid we are, the more rules there are that keep changing, that we don't understand what will punish us and what won't, we retreat. We don't question. We stop even thinking about the issues. Right. We stop participating, and we don't have the money to participate. Yeah. So that I want to break that spell. This book does this. I give examples of how this is applied. And at the very end, pacts that we make with ourselves about how to overcome this, because it's personal. And that's the goal. The left's goal is to personally disarm your mind. This quote of the mind-killing agenda comes from Dune, Herbert's Dune, dealing with the same dynamic, an overarching maniacal power that wants to keep people afraid. Malcolm X warned about this as well, about the fear industrial complex. So it's personal. It only works if we allow it. And my book gives us the method with which to defeat it.
The method with which to defeat it. I do my little bit every day at the end of my podcast. I say, be brave, do good. Because I think there isn't enough courage. And I think it's for the reasons that you detailed. For example, we'll go back to COVID. I posted on Facebook an article by someone who said, there is this treatment that seems to be working for some. This was an article in Time magazine, I think. And I posted and I said, is anyone curious about this? The backlash was swift, horrific. And it made me ask myself, because at the time I was still working on Sunday Night Football, it made me ask myself, do I want to speak out about this anymore?
Exactly.
And that's what I see happening to people. They are afraid to, as you beautifully put it, participate, because they will be called a xenophobe, a racist, a white supremacist, a sexist, a homophobe, a transphobe, whatever name the left can throw at them to make them feel ashamed and want them to just go crawl into a mouse hole.
That's right.
So that they don't get attacked anymore. So the name calling, and to me, I've talked to people who say, but it's really hard to ignore those names that you're called on Twitter. And it's sort of like, well, then don't read the comments. Don't give power to people you don't even know to make you think a certain way about yourself. You know yourself. Don't be afraid of that. But I think you're absolutely right that it's a kind of terrorism, if you will, that this name calling, right?
You know what it's very similar to, and actually my very first pact that I ask people to make is to not allow strangers to control what you think of yourself.
Exactly.
And that's the point, is that these are strangers. Yeah. Why would it is a decision. It's interesting. It's a decision.
It is.
Because we're all sensitive we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but really this has gone beyond. And I think that, when we talk about the nature of why we do this, and, because you talk about bullying, but what I found, I discuss a bit in the book, all of what is happening is very similar, Michele, to domestic violence. It is domestic violence writ large. So you have a battered woman who is told she's no good. She is the source of all the problems. She makes horrible decisions. Her existence is a problem. The batterer says, you would not have to be punished if you would just be a better person, if you would just do as I tell you. If you don't do as I tell you, you're the problem. It is meant to affect self-esteem, and it's gaslighting, which we hear the term all the time, but gaslighting comes from, there was an earlier Gaslight movie, but the very famous Ingrid Bergman movie of the 40s, where her husband was determined to make her think she was going insane, using tricks with lights and noises behind the walls so that he could get her to sign away her fortune to him. Well, now it's the same thing. They're telling you, don't believe your eyes. The border is closed. It's global warming. You're going to die in 12 years if you don't, stop using gasoline. It's all gaslighting, and it's a domestic violence framework where it affects our self-esteem. Some begin to believe that the batterer is right, that we are the problem. There was a story recently about how breathing now is destroying the environment, and so you have people self-immolating, setting themselves on fire because our existence is the problem. So this creates that kind of mass anxiety. It is understandable. The human mind is fragile. And this is a technique that has been finessed over millennia. And at a personal level, we know how it affects us when people denigrate us and tell us all the time that there's problems and that we've got to do X, Y, and Z. No matter how crazy those things are, as a battered population, we say, okay, and just don't hurt me, and I'll try to be better. Yeah. That once you know, as battered women have found, that they're not the problem, and you have some support, and that's what you do. I hope to be a person who does it as well. You're able to re-grip your own sense of yourself and not forget strangers, loved ones, hector you and harass you about your political positions or who you're supporting. That is a method meant to quell you, meant to silence you. And we don't have to. And the world's not going to end if we stand up for ourselves and feel safe in what it is we have to say and think.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight, Healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number. You're part of a caring community. And forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it. From routine checkups to unexpected emergencies, with ShareRight, your healthcare is our top priority. Empower yourself today by taking control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya, Tafoya, to learn more and see how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya. That's SHARERIGHT.org, shareright.org/Tafoya, Tafoya, for healthcare done the right way. All right, let's. I want to read a quote from the book. You talk about Hobbes, not a historian but a philosopher. The American people have the benefit of history to know the failure of revolutions emerging from the academy and the rot of ideas like Marxism that is the foundation of communism and socialism. It's so fascinating to me that there are a lot of people who aren't willing to accept that this cultural Marxism is at play in the United States of America. They seem to think that because we are a democratic republic, that there's no way Marxism can infiltrate. And yet it has, Tammy. So
It has.
what should people look for to know that is there and that's at work?
Well, this is one of the issues of the power of controlling media, is the denigration of anybody who might post an article or talk about Marxism. Because what the Marxists have to do, and what they've realized at the turn of the last century, and after World War I and II, that maybe they needed a kind of a redo, a makeover of Marxism. And so those who were already in the American academies, it was Marxist frameworks that were being applied, like critical theories. We
Yes.
hear a lot about critical race theory, but there's the critical theory dynamics are Marxist. And it requires, and this is, I think, a big part of it, it requires really, and the goal is the destruction of a free republic capitalist society. The argument always is that money is the problem, capitalists don't care about anyone, and that there has to be this artificial equity that has to be established because the bigotry and the racism and all the horrible things are embedded in society. And this is their argument, and it can never be corrected. So you have to have government do corrections. And this is where equity comes in, because there's a fear-based dynamic here, telling people that racism is systemic. Nobody can change. You can't fix it. You're going to be a perpetual victim. And that's what we see playing out now. The issue is, of course, they've had 100 years in the academy to have this become, they churn out the lawyers and the doctors and the journalists and, business people. And we wonder, why is this everywhere? Because slowly but surely, that was what happened. So the history, I've got the history in here, reading suggestions. The background is in this book. Mark Levin has great work on this as well when it comes to Marxism. And it's amazing that it's gaining some traction. There's a reality just because of the hubris, Michele, of the left. Yeah. They now figure, we've got the power like they did with Biden. We don't really need to know how to govern. We can just move through our agenda and the society is quelled and we'll be able to do this without needing to persuade anyone, really. And so that's what we're at. And I think that when anyone arguing for, and this is what the left argues for now, big government and government intervention into making our lives equitable, this argument that you must judge people by the color of their skin, by their sex, by their sexual orientation, creating little hives of people through identity politics.
Yes.
It's identity politics was the main foundational step to get people to view other individuals, as we each have our unique values and ideas, but to view other individuals as part of a group that can then be condemned. And now we're seeing it. People are wondering, what is this with the Jew hatred on the campuses? Well, that is what has been used to condemn the Jews throughout millennia, is eliminating their individuality, putting them into a group that can then be stereotypically condemned. And it's easier to go after a group than it is to go after an individual.
Correct.
That you become familiar with.
Yeah. It's all amazing. It's all in the book. Fear Itself, Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda. I know it's going to fly off the shelves, Tammy. I'm so happy that you've written it, and I'm so happy that I've read it, and will continue to recommend it to other people. And that pact, that first one you said that people need to make with themselves, to decide, because you do have the power to decide this for yourself, that you are not going to let some random stranger on Instagram or Truth Social or Twitter or wherever it is let you determine how you feel about yourself.
That's correct.
It has to stop. And everyone has that power to do that for themselves. I'm so grateful that you took time for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an optimistic book looking forward while revealing the issues that we have, but I'm very excited. Thank you, Michele. I appreciate it.
And that's a really good point. It is an optimistic book. So if you want optimism, you want to have hope for what
solutions.
You and and solutions. Fear Itself by Tammy Bruce. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you. Thanks, Michele. Appreciate it.
So during that conversation, you may have noticed that Tammy quoted Frank Herbert, the author of Dune. Let me read this quote to you. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And every individual has powers and gifts that allow you to manage fear, to get past fear, and to understand that sometimes fear is a survival mode, but sometimes it's something that someone imposes on you, and you don't need that, and you do get to make a decision. So as I say at the end of every podcast, be brave, do good, and we will see you next time.